It was a warm, quiet afternoon when Keanu Reeves, standing outside the small mosque in the heart of a peaceful town, hesitated for a moment. He had never done anything like this before. The idea of visiting a mosque during Ramadan wasn't just a passing thought. It was a decision that had been brewing in his mind for some time. The famous actor, known for his humble and kind-hearted persona, often felt disconnected from the fast-paced world of Hollywood. What he longed for, more than anything, was peace. As Keanu approached the mosque, he was keenly aware of the eyes that were likely on him. His presence wasn't an everyday occurrence in this community. He had been told the mosque had opened its doors to people from all walks of life, and today he was going to be one of them. But would his arrival spark curiosity or even suspicion? He wasn't here for fame. He wasn't here for publicity. He was here because he genuinely wanted to understand. Ramadan, with its deep spiritual practices and values of self-discipline, compassion and reflection had always intrigued him. Would they welcome me? He thought, his footsteps echoing softly against the stone steps. Keanu had spent years searching for a deeper connection with the world, something beyond the noise of his celebrity, a place where he could be grounded, connected to something greater than himself. He had heard stories from friends about the significance of Ramadan, about the community it created, and the sense of togetherness it fostered. It seemed like the perfect opportunity to step out of his comfort zone and learn firsthand. As he entered the mosque, the cool, calm air inside enveloped him. The soft hum of voices, the scent of incense, and the glimmer of gold and white tiles on the walls created an atmosphere that was both serene and humbling. Keanu stood still for a moment, taking in the sight. Despite the unfamiliarity, he felt a sense of peace, a quiet energy that seemed to whisper, "You're exactly where you need to be." But then, his presence didn't go unnoticed. In fact, several pairs of eyes turned toward him, some curious, some skeptical. Keanu could feel the tension rise. He was a stranger here, a celebrity with a face that had been on countless billboards and movie posters, now stepping into a sacred space. Would they accept him for what he was, or was he just another outsider looking in? He walked deeper into the mosque, trying to remain respectful and unobtrusive. The last thing he wanted was to disrupt the sacred atmosphere of Ramadan. His thoughts raced, unsure if he had made the right choice in coming here. Then, as if the universe had conspired, to calm his nerves, an elderly man approached him. His name was Abdul, and he smiled warmly at Keanu, sensing the actor's nervous energy. Abdul's welcoming expression immediately put Keanu at ease. "Welcome, my friend," Abdul said, his voice gentle yet firm. "I can see that you're seeking something. Come, join us. No one is a stranger here." Keanu was taken aback by Abdul's kindness. His nerves began to melt away, and the weight of his uncertainty seemed to lift. Abdul guided him to a spot in the mosque, quietly explaining the practices of Ramadan, and how it was a time for deep reflection, connection, and community. As Keanu settled into his spot, he realized that this wasn't just about him learning something new. It was about stepping into a space where he could experience humanity at its most raw and beautiful. Keanu took a deep breath, finally feeling like he could breathe in a place of such deep meaning. And just as he did, a sense of calm washed over him. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The warm embrace of the mosque's tranquility didn't last long. As Keanu settled into the peaceful atmosphere, he began to sense an underlying tension. Abdul, the kind man who had welcomed him so graciously, was still by his side, but Keanu could feel the eyes of others upon him. Their gaze wasn't warm or inviting, as Abdul's had been. It was more curious, skeptical even. Keanu had spent most of his life in the public eye, and he was used to being stared at. But this was different. These were not the flashes of cameras, or the eyes of fans. They were the eyes of people who took their faith seriously, people who held Ramadan in deep reverence. And here was a stranger, an outsider, who didn't belong. He could hear the murmurs, though they were hushed. Some people whispered to one another, casting glances his way. Keanu understood the unspoken words in their eyes. Why is he here? What does he really want? He had come here with the sincerest of intentions, but doubt began to creep in. Maybe they think I'm just here for publicity, he thought. Maybe they think I'm using their sacred time to build my brand. For a moment, Keanu felt the weight of his celebrity like never before. It had always been a double-edged sword. His fame had opened doors for him, but it had also created walls. And here, in this sacred place, he feared that his fame might alienate him from the very thing he sought, connection. The thought gnawed at him. Could he really blend in here, among these people who were dedicated to their faith and tradition, or would he always be seen as an outsider? It wasn't long before one of the mosque's regular attendees, a man named Yusuf, approached Keanu. His eyes were sharp, his expression unreadable. Unlike Abdul, who had welcomed him with open arms, Yusuf's approach felt like an interrogation. "You are not like us," Yusuf said, his voice low and firm. "Why are you here, really?" Keanu's heart skipped a beat. The question wasn't asked with kindness, it was asked with suspicion. Keanu opened his mouth to speak, but the words caught in his throat. What could he say? How could he explain to Yusuf that he wasn't here for any other reason than to learn, to understand, to find something deeper than what Hollywood could offer? I just wanted to understand more about Ramadan, Keanu finally said, his voice steady but unsure. "I'm not here for anything else." Yusuf didn't respond right away. He just stared at Keanu, as if trying to determine whether the actor was telling the truth or just feeding him a rehearsed line. The silence between them stretched long, and Keanu could feel the unease in the air. Then, just as Keanu thought the situation would escalate, Abdul returned to their side, noticing the tension. "Yusuf," Abdul said gently, his voice like a calming breeze, "this is Keanu. He's here to learn, just like anyone else. We do not judge the hearts of others before understanding them." Yusuf paused, then nodded curtly. "I will trust you, Abdul. But know this. Ramadan is a time of deep reflection. If his heart is not here for the right reasons, then he will be tested." The tension lingered in the air as Yusuf walked away. Keanu let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Abdul placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Don't worry about Yusuf," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Everyone is skeptical of the unknown, but you're here for the right reasons. Just stay true to that." Keanu nodded, still feeling the weight of the moment, but a little lighter now. "Thank you, Abdul. I don't want to disrupt anything. I just want to learn, to find peace." Abdul smiled kindly. "That's all we ask. Let the journey unfold naturally." As the evening prayer began, Keanu took a seat among the others, trying his best to stay quiet and humble. The call to prayer echoed through the mosque, and Keanu closed his eyes for a moment, letting the sound wash over him. It was a reminder, a signal that this was a sacred space, and that he was fortunate to be here, despite the doubts, despite the discomfort. But as he sat there, a part of him couldn't help but wonder, would the other members of the community ever truly accept him? Would he ever be able to find his place here? The road ahead wasn't going to be easy, but Keanu had learned long ago that the most important journeys were the ones that pushed you to grow, to learn, and to change. And in that moment, he realized that if he truly wanted to be a part of this, he would have to be patient with the people, with the community, and most of all, with himself. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The following days felt like a series of small revelations for Keanu. Each morning, as the call to prayer echoed across the mosque, he felt a growing sense of anticipation. Ramadan was more than a simple ritual. It was a profound experience that connected people beyond their differences. For Keanu, the challenge was not just understanding the practices, but finding his place in the community, a place where he, the actor, the outsider, could blend in and truly belong. Keanu's initial fears about being judged slowly began to dissipate. Abdul, the man who had first greeted him, continued to guide him through the practices and rituals of Ramadan with patience and kindness. However, the other members of the community still watched him closely, some with curiosity, others with skepticism. There were quiet whispers in the corners of the mosque, some people still unsure of Keanu's intentions. But there was something in the air, an unspoken shift in the way people regarded him. It wasn't as if they accepted him immediately. It wasn't that simple. It was more like a gentle, collective observation. Each time he joined them for prayer, each time he helped with a small task, like passing out dates to break the fast or cleaning the prayer area, the community softened toward him. There were no grand gestures, no immediate signs of complete acceptance, but there was a small, growing sense of belonging. One evening, as Keanu sat cross-legged on the prayer mat beside Abdul, a young woman named Layla approached him. Layla was soft-spoken, with dark, thoughtful eyes, and she had been one of the first to remain distant from Keanu. She didn't openly judge him, but she had not made an effort to welcome him either. Like many others, she was cautious, perhaps even skeptical of his true motives. "Keanu," she said quietly, as the call to prayer faded into silence, "why did you come here?" Her question was simple, but there was a weight to it. It wasn't the question of a person looking for a celebrity story, but the question of someone trying to understand why a stranger would seek solace in something so deeply sacred. Keanu took a deep breath before answering. "I've always felt disconnected from what truly matters," he said, his voice soft but sincere. "I've spent years in a world that's loud, superficial. I'm looking for something real, something that grounds me. I've heard about Ramadan, about its ability to bring people together, to help them find peace. And I thought, maybe I could find some of that peace too." Layla nodded, studying him with her deep brown eyes. There was something in her gaze, something like understanding, but also uncertainty. She wasn't convinced yet, but she wasn't dismissing him either. "Peace is not easy to find," she said slowly, "and it doesn't come with fame or recognition. It comes with patience, humility, and sincerity." Keanu nodded. He had known this, of course, but hearing it from someone who had lived through the spiritual discipline of Ramadan made it feel more real. He was learning that peace wasn't something you could simply achieve. It was something you had to earn, through small, quiet actions, through giving, listening, and learning from others. That night, as they gathered to break their fast, Keanu felt a new wave of gratitude wash over him. There was no grand speech or dramatic moment of realization. It was just the simple act of sitting down with a group of people who, despite their initial reservations, were beginning to include him in their sacred space. The meal they shared was simple: dates, water, a bowl of soup and bread, but it felt like more than just food. It felt like an offering, an invitation, a sign of acceptance. The act of breaking the fast together was symbolic, not just of nourishment but of shared humanity. It was a reminder that, despite their differences, everyone at the table had one thing in common: the desire for peace, connection, and understanding. As they ate in silence, Keanu couldn't help but notice how each person seemed to savor the moment. It wasn't about the food, it was about the unity that came with it. Each bite was an offering of trust, a quiet acknowledgement that they were all in this together. Keanu couldn't help but feel moved by this unspoken bond. Here, he wasn't just Keanu Reeves, the actor. He was just another person, sharing in something bigger than himself. He wasn't here to take anything from them. He was here to give, to learn, and to respect the sacredness of this tradition. As the evening wore on and the prayer chants once again filled the air, Keanu felt a deep sense of peace settle into his chest. It was a peace he hadn't experienced in years, a peace that came not from fame or recognition, but from the simple act of being present, of giving without expecting anything in return. And in that moment, he understood what Ramadan truly meant. It wasn't just about abstaining from food or drink. It was about learning to give of oneself, to embrace humility, and to seek a deeper connection with others and with the divine. The days stretched on, and Keanu felt himself changing in ways he hadn't expected. The world outside the mosque, the world of flashing cameras and constant attention, seemed more distant now. The fast-paced noise of Hollywood, the glitz and glam of fame, had started to fade into the background. The deeper Keanu got into his journey through Ramadan, the more he realized how little he had truly understood about peace and purpose. There were moments, however, that still tested him. The tension between his public persona and the peaceful existence he was seeking inside the mosque wasn't always easy to reconcile. It wasn't the people inside the mosque that made him feel out of place. It was the feeling of being torn between two worlds, the world where he was Keanu Reeves, the actor, and the world where he was just a man seeking connection, humility, and understanding. One late afternoon, just as the sun began to set and the call to prayer rang out over the city, a situation arose that would challenge Keanu in a way he hadn't anticipated. He had been asked to speak at a local charity event, something he had committed to before coming to the mosque. The event would bring together many of his Hollywood peers, and for a moment, Keanu was filled with dread at the thought of stepping back into the spotlight. The charity was for children in need, a cause close to Keanu's heart. But he knew the event would be a whirlwind of interviews, photos, and the constant pressure of being on. How could he, a man who had spent the past few weeks in a place of deep reflection, return to a world so full of noise? He sat on the steps of the mosque, watching the sun dip below the horizon. His heart felt heavy. The simple peace he had found here was suddenly in jeopardy, and Keanu wasn't sure how to navigate the chasm that seemed to be opening between these two worlds. Abdul, as always, sensed Keanu's inner turmoil. The elderly man approached him, his footsteps soft against the stone path. "Keanu," Abdul said, his voice gentle, "what troubles you?" Keanu took a deep breath, finally turning to face the older man. "I have to go to a charity event tomorrow," Keanu began, his voice low, "and it feels like everything I've found here, the peace, the calm, is being pulled away. I don't know how to reconcile the two worlds. I don't want to lose what I've gained here, but I don't want to let down the people I've promised to help either." Abdul nodded thoughtfully, sitting down beside Keanu on the steps. The evening air was cool and the sound of the nearby prayer echoed softly. "It is not about losing one world or the other," Abdul said. "It is about finding balance. You are not Keanu the actor when you walk through those doors. You are Keanu the man, the soul on a journey, the human who seeks peace. The world outside will always try to pull you back, but you can carry what you found here within you in your heart." Keanu looked at Abdul, trying to understand. "But how do I do that? How do I live in both worlds without losing myself?" Abdul smiled softly. "You don't have to choose one world over the other. It is not about compartmentalizing who you are. It is about integrating what you've learned here into everything you do. When you speak tomorrow, speak from your heart. Let the peace and humility you found here guide you. Let it be a part of your work, of the way you interact with others. This is your challenge." Keanu felt a sense of relief wash over him. For the first time in days, he wasn't filled with anxiety about his public appearance. Instead, he realized that he had been given an opportunity to carry the lessons of Ramadan into the world that awaited him. It was no longer about separating the two. It was about merging them in a way that felt authentic, honest, and true to the journey he had been on. The night of the charity event, Keanu stood backstage, preparing to make his appearance. The familiar sounds of cameras clicking and the buzz of the crowd echoed in the distance. It was a world he knew all too well, but tonight it felt different. When Keanu stepped out onto the stage, his usual confidence was replaced with something deeper, something more grounded. He spoke not just as an actor, but as a man who had come to understand the value of humility, connection, and peace. His words were simple but heartfelt, and as he spoke about the importance of helping those in need, he felt the presence of the mosque within him. The lessons of Ramadan were no longer just a part of his quiet moments at the mosque. They were now part of his public life too. As the event came to a close, Keanu was approached by several of his peers, many of whom were moved by his words. They complimented him, but there was something more genuine in their eyes. They saw something in him, a sense of peace and purpose that hadn't been there before. It was the Keanu they had always known, but somehow more real, more connected. That night, Keanu returned to the mosque feeling a quiet sense of fulfillment. The two worlds, his public life and his journey of self-discovery, had merged in a way that felt natural, authentic. He had carried the lessons of Ramadan with him into the world outside, and for the first time in a long time he felt at peace. The days after the charity event were filled with a sense of calm that Keanu hadn't experienced in years. There was a quiet certainty about him now, an inner peace that had come from embracing both the humility of Ramadan and the responsibilities of his public life. He had discovered a balance, a way to walk through both worlds without feeling torn between them. It wasn't always easy, but he had learned to carry the lessons he had found in the mosque with him everywhere he went. However, the peace he had found was soon to be tested in a way he never expected. One evening, as Keanu sat with Abdul and a few other community members after iftar, a conversation began to shift. Keanu had been sharing his experiences, how he felt transformed by the community, how Ramadan had given him a sense of clarity, but as he spoke, he noticed a sudden shift in Abdul's demeanor. The elderly man's usual warm smile faded, and there was a depth to his gaze that unsettled Keanu. Keanu paused, sensing something was amiss. "Abdul, is everything all right?" he asked, his voice full of concern. Abdul didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stood up slowly, his movements deliberate. "Keanu," he began, his voice heavy with a gravity Keanu hadn't heard before. "There is something you must know, something I should have told you earlier, but I was waiting for the right moment." Keanu's stomach twisted in unease. The atmosphere had shifted from calm to something more tense, and the small group of people around them had grown silent, watching the exchange with careful attention. "What is it, Abdul?" Keanu asked, his voice quieter now. "You're scaring me." Abdul looked around at the others, his expression serious. He then turned back to Keanu. "I did not tell you this before because I thought it would affect your experience here, but now I see that it is necessary for you to know." Keanu felt a knot form in his chest, a sense of impending dread. "Please, Abdul, just tell me." Abdul took a deep breath before continuing. "You are not just here by chance, Keanu. There is a reason you were brought here, to this mosque during this month of Ramadan." Keanu felt his heart race. "What do you mean?" Abdul's eyes softened, but his voice remained firm. "Your life, the way you've lived it, your fame, your success, your struggles, it has all led you to this moment. The peace you've been searching for, the transformation you've experienced, it wasn't just coincidence. You were meant to come here to find a deeper purpose. But there is a truth you need to face, Keanu. Something you've been avoiding." Keanu's mind spun, his thoughts racing. He had been seeking peace, but had he been running from something deeper, something he hadn't yet recognized in himself? "What? Truth?" Keanu asked, his voice barely a whisper now. Abdul looked at him with a piercing intensity. "The truth is that you have been living in a world of distraction. Fame, success, and all the external accolades, they were never meant to define you. But they have. And now, the real test begins. This journey, this peaceful journey you're on isn't just about learning to live with humility. It's about facing the parts of yourself you've been avoiding, the parts that have been shaped by your fame, your past decisions. You need to let go of the self you've built. You must allow yourself to be reborn fully. Only then can you truly find peace." Keanu's chest tightened. The words felt like a punch to the gut. Was he really ready to let go of the person he had been for so long? The person everyone knew, the person who had built his identity on the world of movies and celebrity? Could he truly shed that skin and allow himself to become someone new? The room felt heavier now, the air thick with the weight of Abdul's words. Keanu looked around at the others, their eyes filled with understanding and compassion, but also a quiet expectation. They were waiting for him to decide, to choose. He turned back to Abdul, his voice shaking slightly. "I don't know if I can do that. Letting go of everything. It sounds like giving up everything I've worked for." Abdul's face softened, and he placed a hand on Keanu's shoulder. "It is not about giving up what you've worked for, Keanu. It is about giving up what no longer serves you. The ego, the pride, the fear that keeps you from seeing the truth of who you are. You don't have to be defined by what you've done in the past. You are more than your fame, more than your past mistakes. It is about embracing who you are now and who you are becoming." Keanu sat in silence, his mind swirling with the weight of Abdul's words. The man who had once been a movie star, who had carried the world's expectations on his shoulders, now found himself questioning everything he had known about himself. What if everything he had been told about success, about life, was wrong? What if the real meaning of his existence had nothing to do with fame, and everything to do with letting go of his past? For a long time, Keanu didn't speak. The silence in the room was deafening as he grappled with what Abdul had said. It was the first time he had been forced to confront his own vulnerability so directly. Finally, Keanu spoke, his voice breaking through the silence. I don't know if I'm ready, but I want to be. I want to let go. I want to be more than just the man everyone thinks I am. Abdul smiled, the warmth returning to his eyes. That is all that matters, Keanu. The fact that you are willing to face this truth means you're already on the right path. The journey you are on will not be easy, but it is the only one that will lead you to true peace. You must be brave enough to walk it. Keanu nodded slowly, feeling the weight of the decision settle on his shoulders. This wasn't just about fame or charity events or even Ramadan. It was about redefining who he was, letting go of everything that no longer served him, and allowing himself to be reborn in a way he never thought possible. As the evening prayer began, Keanu closed his eyes, feeling a deep sense of surrender. He wasn't sure where the road ahead would take him, but for the first time he felt ready to walk it, without fear, without the weight of his past. The days that followed were filled with a quiet intensity. Keanu had made the decision to face the truth that Abdul had revealed to him. He was ready to let go of the ego and the image he had built around himself. It wasn't an easy decision, far from it, but it was a necessary one. Keanu could feel the weight of his past slipping off his shoulders, layer by layer, but it was clear that the journey he had started was not something that could be solved overnight. Keanu's life, before all of this, had been about control. The films, the fame, the schedule, it had all been designed to keep him in the driver's seat. He had built a fortress of self-importance around him, but deep inside, there was always a nagging emptiness. He hadn't realized it at the time, but that emptiness had been the space where peace could have lived. Now, sitting quietly in the mosque during the pre-dawn prayer, Keanu felt something he hadn't felt in years, a sense of serenity. The call to prayer echoed through the air, its words so powerful and rhythmic that they stirred something deep within him. This wasn't just a song of devotion. It was a call to let go, to surrender the distractions that had kept him from living a true and honest life. The weeks of Ramadan had done more than just teach Keanu the rituals of fasting and prayer. They had shown him how to truly connect with others, how to give without expecting anything in return, and, perhaps most importantly, how to forgive himself. There had been times, especially in the early days, when Keanu felt overwhelmed by the weight of his own guilt and doubts. He had spent so much of his life chasing things that ultimately didn't matter, and now he was confronted with the reality that those pursuits had kept him from living with purpose. But now, he could feel that purpose beginning to form. Keanu had begun to spend more time outside the mosque, interacting with the community in deeper ways. He visited the sick, helped the poor, and spent his afternoons assisting with food distribution for those less fortunate. Each small act of kindness was not just a way to help, it was a way to heal. It was through these acts that Keanu started to see that peace didn't come from the things he had accumulated over the years. It came from the connections he made, from the impact he could have on others' lives. One afternoon, as he helped a young mother carry groceries to her home, Keanu noticed how much joy the simple act of kindness brought to both of them. The woman had thanked him several times, as if his assistance was more than just a favor. It was something much deeper, something that connected them as human beings. Later that evening, as the sky turned a dusky purple and the sounds of the city began to quiet down, Keanu returned to the mosque. He sat alone in one of the prayer rooms, his hands resting gently on his lap. The space was quiet now, the weight of the day settling into the cool stone walls. Keanu felt at peace in a way he had never felt before. This peace, he realized, was not something that came from having all the answers. It came from being comfortable with the uncertainty, from allowing himself to feel vulnerable, from letting go of the need to control every aspect of his life. He thought back to the day when Abdul had first told him about the journey he was on, how he had been so lost in his own identity, in his own fame, that he couldn't see the truth of what he had been searching for all along. The truth was that life was not about what he could accomplish. It was about what he could give. It was about the connections he made, the love he shared, and the way he could make a difference in the lives of those around him. The road ahead would not always be easy. There would still be moments of doubt, moments when the world outside the mosque would try to pull him back into its noisy, distracting embrace. But Keanu knew now that he could navigate those moments. He could find peace amidst the chaos, because peace wasn't something that came from external circumstances. It came from within. As the final words of the prayer echoed in the room, Keanu smiled quietly to himself. He was no longer the man who had walked into the mosque weeks ago, unsure of his place in the world. He was someone new, someone who had learned to listen, to give, and to accept the impermanence of life. The journey wasn't over, but Keanu knew that he was on the right path, a path of self-discovery, of service, and of living with an open heart. As the month of Ramadan came to a close, Keanu felt a sense of completion. The trials, the struggles, the breakthroughs, they had all led him to this moment. The fasting, the prayers, the quiet reflection, they had all shaped him into a person more grounded than he had ever been. The lessons of the mosque were still fresh, and Keanu was determined to carry them with him no matter what. But as the final days of Ramadan passed, Keanu faced an unexpected challenge, one that would test whether he had truly embraced the transformation that had begun inside the mosque. A message arrived one morning, an invitation from an old colleague, a director with whom Keanu had worked many years ago. The email was warm and inviting, offering Keanu a role in an upcoming film. It was a major project, one that promised to catapult his career to new heights. The director was excited to have him on board, and the team was eager to work with him. It was everything Keanu had worked for in the past, an opportunity to once again be in the spotlight, to achieve something significant. Keanu sat at the small wooden table inside his modest apartment, the offer resting in front of him. The weight of it hung in the air, and for a moment he felt the familiar tug of temptation. This was what he had always wanted, wasn't it? The chance to be a part of something huge, to shine on the big screen once again. But then he remembered everything he had learned during his time in the mosque, the importance of humility, the need to give rather than to take, the idea that peace could not be found in external success, but within. This film role would mean long hours, endless media attention, and the possibility of being swept back into the very world he had spent the last few weeks distancing himself from. Keanu wasn't sure what to do. His heart longed for the peace he had found, but the allure of returning to his old life, the life he had known for so long, was undeniable. The ego that had once thrived on fame and recognition was still there, whispering to him, "This is what you were made for. You can't turn this down." But was that really true? Was the role the path to his purpose, or would it pull him away from the deeper calling he had discovered within himself? He needed to talk to Abdul. The mosque was quiet when Keanu arrived, the morning light streaming through the stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns on the floor. Abdul was sitting in the same spot he always did, a cup of tea in his hand, his eyes soft but wise. Keanu sat down beside him, his heart heavy with the dilemma he was facing. "Abdul," Keanu began, his voice serious, "I've been offered a role in a major film. It's everything I've worked for, everything I've wanted in the past, but I don't know what to do. I've been living here, finding peace, but this offer feels like it could pull me right back into the world I was trying to leave behind. The world of fame, the world of recognition. I'm not sure if I'm ready to go back." Abdul took a slow sip of his tea before responding, his voice calm and measured. "Keanu, you must understand that life is not about avoiding the world. It is about how you move through it. If you take this role, take it with the same heart you've carried here. You have learned much and the world needs what you have discovered. But if you return to that life simply to feed your ego, then you will lose the peace you've found. This is your challenge." Keanu listened intently, feeling the weight of Abdul's words. It wasn't about avoiding the world of fame. It was about integrating the peace he had found into everything he did, whether on the big screen or in the quiet corners of his life. "You're saying I can have both," Keanu said, his voice thoughtful. "I can do the work I love, but it doesn't have to define me. I don't have to let it control who I am." Abdul nodded, a gentle smile on his face. "Exactly. It is not the role or the attention that matters. It is the way you choose to approach it. The peace you seek is already inside of you. It is how you live your life, how you show up for others, how you serve. That is the true purpose." Keanu sat quietly for a moment, allowing Abdul's words to sink in. He realized that his decision wasn't about choosing between fame and peace. It was about living both with intention, bringing the lessons of humility, compassion, and selflessness into every part of his life. The next day, Keanu met with the director to discuss the film. He approached the conversation with a new perspective, one that had been shaped by his time in the mosque. He spoke with passion about the role, about how it aligned with his desire to create work that had meaning, work that could make a positive impact. He also set boundaries for himself, ensuring that his time on the project wouldn't pull him away from the community or from the peace he had worked so hard to cultivate. The director was surprised, but impressed. "Keanu, this is exactly why we want you in this role. You've always been more than just an actor. You've always brought something deeper to your performances. This will be no different." For the first time in years, Keanu felt in control, not of the project, but of how he would allow it to fit into his life. He wasn't willing to sacrifice the peace he had found in the mosque, but he also wasn't going to run from the work he loved. This was the challenge he had been waiting for, living in the world but not being consumed by it. As he walked away from the meeting, Keanu felt a sense of pride and clarity. He had made a decision that honored both his inner journey and his outward calling. He was ready to face the next chapter of his life, not as the man who sought fame, but as the man who had found something much more valuable: peace, purpose, and a heart that was open to both the world and the people in it. The filming of the new movie began, but it wasn't like any other film Keanu had worked on before. Yes, there were the familiar long hours on set, the hectic schedules, and the flashing lights of cameras, but this time something was different. Keanu had changed, and so too had the way he approached his work. He wasn't driven by the desire for validation, and he wasn't concerned with what others thought of him. Instead, his focus was on something deeper: presence. Keanu had learned the value of being fully present in every moment, and now he applied this lesson to his work. On set, he was not just an actor delivering lines. He was someone invested in the lives of the people around him: the crew, the fellow actors, the directors. Keanu made it a point to connect with everyone, from the star of the film to the person in charge of craft services. He wanted to bring the peace and humility he had discovered in the mosque to every interaction, every moment of the production process. One afternoon between scenes, Keanu found himself talking to a young production assistant named Mia. She was in her early 20s, and Keanu had noticed how hard she worked, always rushing around, making sure everything on set was running smoothly. She looked exhausted, as if the weight of the entire production rested on her shoulders. Without missing a beat, Keanu approached her, asking if she needed any help. Mia looked surprised but grateful. "Honestly, Keanu, I don't know how I'm supposed to keep up with all this. It's overwhelming," she confessed, her voice tinged with stress. Keanu smiled warmly, sitting down beside her. "Mia, I get it. The pressure is real. But sometimes it's important to take a step back and breathe. The work you do is vital to making this film happen, but don't forget to take care of yourself too." She looked at him with a bit of skepticism, as if she wasn't sure how someone as famous as Keanu could understand her struggles. But Keanu continued, his voice gentle but firm. "Look, you don't have to do everything alone. Ask for help when you need it. Sometimes taking care of yourself is the most important thing you can do for everyone else. If you're feeling overwhelmed, it's okay to stop, take a breath, and reset." "I've learned that the hard way," Keanu said, his words carrying the weight of his own experience. "We all have our roles to play, and we all need to show up for each other. It's about being there for one another, not just doing things to get by." Mia looked at him, her eyes softening. "Thanks, Keanu. I guess I've been so focused on making everything perfect that I forgot it's okay to take a break." Keanu nodded, feeling a quiet satisfaction in the exchange. It was moments like this, small, genuine moments of connection, that made the work meaningful. It wasn't about the accolades or the fame. It was about being present for others, about showing up for the people who were part of the story, no matter how big or small their role might seem. The more Keanu embraced this philosophy, the more he noticed a shift on set. The environment became warmer, more collaborative. People smiled more, helped each other more, and worked with a renewed sense of purpose. It was as if the energy of the film had changed, as if everyone had a deeper connection to the work they were doing. But the real test of his new approach came one evening after filming wrapped. The crew and cast gathered for a celebratory dinner. It was meant to be a moment of relaxation and camaraderie after a long and exhausting shoot. But as the night wore on, Keanu saw something he hadn't expected. A fellow actor, someone he had worked with for years, was becoming increasingly upset. They had been drinking, and the mood at the table had shifted from light-hearted to tense. The actor was frustrated with the way the film was progressing, the lack of creative control, and the pressure they felt to perform at the highest level. Keanu watched as the situation escalated, the actor's voice rising with anger, and the conversation growing more and more heated. There was a moment when it seemed as though the entire dinner might unravel, and the tension in the air was palpable. Keanu took a deep breath, and instead of retreating or ignoring the situation, he stepped in. He walked over to the actor, his presence steady and calm, and gently placed a hand on their shoulder. "Hey," Keanu said softly, "I can see you're frustrated. But yelling or pushing back in anger isn't going to get us where we need to be. We're all in this together. This film isn't just about one person. It's about everyone showing up, bringing their best, and working as a team. So let's take a moment, breathe, and see how we can move forward. We're not enemies here, we're collaborators." The actor paused, looking up at Keanu. For a moment, there was silence. Then, with a deep sigh, the actor relaxed their shoulders, the tension slowly melting away. They nodded, a small but genuine smile forming on their face. "Thanks, Keanu," the actor said, their voice softer now. "You're right. I let my frustrations get the best of me." The dinner continued, but the atmosphere had changed. People were talking, laughing, and the mood had shifted from one of competition to one of collaboration. Keanu's calm presence had created a space for everyone to reflect, to step back from their egos, and to remember why they were there in the first place, to create something meaningful together. In that moment, Keanu realized just how much power presence had. It wasn't about fixing everything or making grand gestures. It was about showing up with authenticity, being present in each moment, and offering compassion and understanding when needed. His presence had become a catalyst for change on set, and the effect was undeniable. As he left the dinner later that evening, Keanu felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This was what he had been searching for, not just peace, but the ability to bring that peace into the world around him. His journey had led him to a place where he could be both a part of the world and above it, present, engaged, and connected to something much bigger than himself. As the weeks passed, Keanu's transformation became evident to everyone around him. The subtle changes in how he interacted with others, his approach to the work, and his deeper commitment to a life of humility were not lost on the people he worked with. The warmth that had started within the walls of the mosque had spread like a quiet wildfire, touching every aspect of his life. From the set of his film to the streets he walked through, Keanu had become a living example of what it meant to live with purpose and presence. But even as his personal life flourished, a lingering question remained. Would this newfound peace, this journey toward spiritual growth, endure once the film wrapped? Keanu had seen many people, including himself, lose their way after the pressures of fame and the distractions of the world crept back in. The question was no longer about whether he could maintain his transformation. It was about whether he could maintain it while living in the world that had once pulled him away from his true self. One evening, after filming had concluded for the day, Keanu stood outside the mosque, staring at the horizon as the last light of the day melted into a star-strewn sky. The film was wrapping up, and soon he would return to a schedule filled with interviews, premieres, and red carpets. His heart swelled with a mixture of gratitude and apprehension. He had learned so much during his time of reflection and humility, but now he was about to face the ultimate test. As Keanu stepped inside the mosque, he was greeted by Abdul, who had become more than just a spiritual guide to him. He was a friend, a mentor, and a reminder of what mattered most in life. The peaceful rhythm of the prayer room welcomed him, and the familiar smell of incense brought him back to a place of serenity. "You seem distant, Keanu," Abdul said as they sat together. "You're wondering how it will be when you step back into the world of fame, aren't you?" Keanu nodded slowly. "I've learned so much, Abdul. I feel like I've changed in ways I can't even describe. But I'm afraid, when the film ends, the red carpets return, the flashing lights will come back, and I'll be swept into the same life I tried to leave behind. How do I keep the peace I've found in this world outside these walls?" Abdul smiled, his gaze wise and knowing. "Keanu, you are not the same man who walked through these doors months ago. You've already changed. The peace you seek is not something external. It's something you carry within you. It is not about avoiding the world. It's about how you live in it. Remember, you have already chosen to show up differently. That choice is what will guide you no matter what comes next." Keanu closed his eyes, letting Abdul's words sink in. He realized that his journey was not a temporary change. It was a way of life, a choice that he would carry with him for the rest of his days. It wasn't about living in isolation or rejecting the world he had known. It was about living fully and authentically in the world while staying grounded in the peace and presence he had discovered. It was about being present in each moment, whether he was walking the red carpet or helping someone in need. The next morning, Keanu prepared to return to the world of film premieres and press tours. But this time, there was a quiet confidence in his step. The ego-driven desire for fame had lost its hold on him. Instead of seeking validation, he was eager to see how he could use his platform to spread kindness, humility, and peace. He wasn't afraid of what was to come. He was ready. As he stepped onto the red carpet for the film's premiere, the lights flashed in his direction and the world's attention focused on him once again. But this time, Keanu felt different. The flashing cameras didn't feel intrusive. They were just another part of the world he had learned to navigate with calm. He smiled, waved to fans and spoke to reporters, but the heart of the man who stood before them had changed. He wasn't seeking applause or recognition. He was simply being himself, someone who had learned to live with purpose and authenticity. Later, as he walked down the carpet and the night unfolded around him, Keanu felt a deep sense of peace settle within him. The noise of the world no longer felt overwhelming. It was as though he had found his center, his own grounding, amidst the chaos of fame. The accolades and praise were just a part of the world. The true reward was something much deeper, the joy of living in alignment with his values, the connection with others, and the peace of knowing that he could be himself, no matter the circumstances. As he stood there, taking it all in, Keanu realized that the journey had indeed come full circle. The lessons learned in the mosque, the peace found within himself, had made him a more connected, more compassionate person. The journey wasn't about reaching a destination. It was about the process of living authentically and mindfully, one moment at a time. And with that realization, Keanu felt ready for whatever came next. The world would continue to turn, the lights would continue to flash, but he would carry with him the quiet wisdom that had transformed his life. He was no longer just a man seeking fame. He was a man living with purpose, embracing both the world and the peace within him. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?